Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone else's life and quietly asked yourself, why can't I be like them? Maybe you've never said those words out loud, but you've felt them. You see someone your age buying a house, starting a successful business, finding the love you've always wanted, living the life you once imagined for yourself. And without even realizing it, you begin measuring your life against theirs. Suddenly, your achievements don't seem impressive anymore. Your progress feels too slow. Your dreams feel too far away. And no matter how hard you work, a quiet voice inside your mind keeps whispering, you're still not enough. Have you ever noticed something strange? You can receive compliments and still doubt yourself. You can achieve a goal you've chased for years, only to feel empty a few days later. You can give your best and somehow still believe you should have done more. Why? Why does enough always seem just out of reach? Most people think the answer is simple. They believe they need more success, more money, more confidence, more recognition. They tell themselves, once I achieve this, once I become that, then I'll finally feel enough. But what if that's the biggest lie you've ever believed? What if the feeling of not being enough has nothing to do with what you own, what you've accomplished, or how other people see you? What if it's coming from somewhere much deeper, somewhere you've never thought to look? Think about this. Have you ever accomplished something you once dreamed of, only to immediately chase the next thing? As if happiness had an expiration date. As if no achievement could silence that voice for very long. If that sounds familiar, you're not broken. You're experiencing something millions of people quietly struggle with every day. But very few people ever understand why. In this story, you're going to discover where that voice really comes from, why it has so much power over your life, and how you can finally stop letting it decide your worth. But before you can silence that voice, you need to meet it. Because here's the truth. The voice telling you that you're not enough may not even be yours. And once you discover where it really came from, you'll never see yourself the same way again. Let's begin with the place where it all started. Chapter 1. The Voice That Never Leaves. Let me ask you another question. When was the first time you felt that you weren't good enough? Most people can't answer that. Not because it never happened, but because it happened so long ago that it became part of who they believed they were. Think back for a moment. Maybe you brought home a test paper. You were proud of your score. But instead of hearing, "Great job," you heard, "Why wasn't it higher?" Maybe you worked hard on something, but someone only noticed your mistakes. Maybe you compared yourself to a sibling, a classmate, or someone who always seemed better. Little by little, without realizing it, your mind started collecting evidence. I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not good enough. Those weren't facts. They were conclusions. Conclusions made by a younger version of you who didn't know the difference. The strange thing is, that younger version of you never really disappeared. Even today, every time you make a mistake, that old voice comes back, not to help you, but to remind you of every moment you felt less than enough. Have you noticed how differently you speak to yourself compared to other people? If your best friend failed, you'd probably say, "It's okay. You'll learn from this." But when you fail, you tell yourself, "I always mess things up. I'm such an idiot. I'll never be enough." Why? Why do you show more kindness to strangers than you do to yourself? Here's something most people never realize. The loudest critic in your life usually isn't another person. It's the voice you've repeated inside your own mind for years. The more you listen to it, the more believable it becomes. Until one day, you stop questioning it. You simply accept it as the truth. And that's dangerous, Because once you believe you're not enough, every challenge feels like proof. Every rejection feels personal. Every mistake becomes evidence that the voice was right all along. But here's the question I want you to think about. What if that voice has been lying to you this entire time? What if you've spent years trying to fix yourself when you were never the problem? Don't answer yet, because before you can silence that voice, you need to understand where it learned to speak, and what you're about to discover might completely change the way you see your past. Because the voice telling you you're not enough didn't appear out of nowhere. Someone or something taught it to you. And once you uncover its true source, you'll finally understand why you've carried this invisible weight for so long. We'll uncover that truth in the next chapter, Chapter 2, The Comparison Trap. Have you ever noticed that you can feel completely happy with your life until you see someone else's? Maybe you open your phone for just a few minutes. You see someone getting promoted, someone buying their dream home, someone traveling the world, someone announcing an engagement, someone celebrating a success you've been working toward for years. And suddenly, the life that felt good enough just a moment ago feels small. You didn't lose anything. Nothing in your life actually changed. But somehow, you feel like you've fallen behind. Why? Because comparison has a strange way of changing how you see yourself. It doesn't just make other people look bigger. It makes you look smaller. The worst part is, your mind almost always compares unfairly. You compare your struggles to someone else's highlights, your failures to their victories, your beginning to their finish line. Imagine watching a movie, but only seeing the final scene. You'd think the hero's life was easy. You wouldn't see the years of failure, the sleepless nights, the fear, the sacrifices. Social media works the same way. Most people don't post their loneliness. They don't post their anxiety, their arguments, their regrets, or the moments they questioned everything. They share the best chapters, while you're judging yourself by the pages no one else gets to see. And, without realizing it, you begin chasing a life that may not even be real. But let me ask you something. If everyone disappeared tomorrow, no social media, no followers, no likes, no one to impress, would you still want the same goals? Or have some of your dreams been borrowed from other people's expectations? That's a difficult question, because sometimes we don't want success. We want the feeling of finally being enough. And those are two very different things. Here's the truth. There will always be someone richer, smarter, more attractive, more experienced. If your peace depends on being better than everyone else, you'll spend your entire life competing in a race that has no finish line. Real confidence doesn't come from proving your worth. It comes from knowing your worth, even while you're still growing. The moment you stop measuring your life against everyone else's, you finally have the freedom to build a life that's truly your own. But comparison isn't the deepest problem. It's only a symptom. Something much more powerful has been controlling your choices for years. A hidden need that quietly asks, will they approve of me now? And until you discover where that need comes from, you'll keep searching for validation in places that can never truly satisfy you. In the next chapter, you'll uncover why so many people spend their entire lives chasing approval without ever realizing the price they're paying. Chapter 3. The Approval Trap. Let me ask you something. How much of your life are you actually living for yourself? And how much of it is spent trying to make other people happy? Think about the last time you wanted to say something, but stayed quiet because you were afraid of being judged. Maybe you wanted to apply for a job, start something new, leave a situation that was hurting you, or simply become more honest about who you are. But then you imagined what people would say. What will they think? What if they don't understand? What if they don't approve? So you stayed where you were. And maybe nobody noticed. But you did. You knew there was something you wanted to do, and you chose someone else's approval over your own happiness. At first, it seems harmless. You make people proud. You avoid arguments. You keep everyone comfortable. But slowly, something inside you becomes uncomfortable. Because every time you change yourself to be accepted, you move a little further away from yourself. And eventually, you may not even know what you actually want anymore. You just know what everyone else expects from you. Maybe you've experienced this. You receive a compliment, and suddenly you feel valuable. Then someone criticizes you, and your confidence disappears. One person's opinion can lift you up, while another person's opinion can destroy your entire day. That's when you need to ask yourself, who gave them the power to decide how you feel about yourself? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You can spend your entire life trying to impress people, and still never be enough for everyone. Someone will always disagree. Someone will always criticize. Someone will always think you should be doing more. So, imagine carrying the opinions of everyone you meet. Like a heavy backpack. Every judgment adds another stone. Every rejection adds another. Every attempt to please someone adds another. And after years of carrying it, you wonder why you're exhausted. Maybe you don't need to become stronger. Maybe you need to put some of the weight down. Start asking yourself, do I actually want this, or do I just want people to approve of me? That question can change your decisions. Because real confidence isn't believing everyone will like you. It's knowing you'll be okay, even when someone doesn't. Self-respect begins when you stop abandoning yourself just to be accepted. When you choose what is right for you, even when nobody applauds. When you make a mistake, you learn. When someone rejects you, you keep going. And when someone doesn't understand you, you don't immediately assume something is wrong with you. You remember who you are. But there's still something deeper. If your worth doesn't come from success, and it doesn't come from other people's approval, then where does your sense of worth actually come from? That's the question that changes everything. And the answer is waiting for you in the next chapter. Chapter 4. You were never the problem. Take a moment and think about everything you've been trying to prove. Maybe you've been trying to prove that you're smart enough, successful enough, attractive enough, strong enough, worth loving, worth respecting, worth choosing. And maybe you've spent years believing that if you could just become better, you would finally feel good about yourself. So you worked harder. You achieved more. You tried to improve your appearance. You tried to make more money. You tried to become someone people would admire. And for a while, it worked. You reached a goal. You felt proud. You finally thought, maybe now I'm enough. But then something strange happened. The feeling disappeared. A new goal appeared. A new weakness needed fixing. A new person became someone you compared yourself to. And suddenly, you were back where you started. Still chasing. Still proving. Still wondering why you couldn't simply feel satisfied with yourself. Here's what you need to understand. You cannot build your self-worth on things that constantly change. Your job can change. Your appearance can change. Your income can change. People's opinions can change. Even your achievements can eventually become ordinary. If your worth depends on those things, your confidence will always be fragile. One failure can make you feel worthless. One rejection can make you question yourself. One mistake can make you forget everything you've ever done right. But your worth was never supposed to depend on perfection. You are allowed to be a work in progress. You can have flaws and still deserve respect. You can make mistakes and still deserve compassion. You can be unsuccessful today and still have incredible potential tomorrow. Read that again in your mind. Your current situation is not your identity. A bad chapter doesn't mean it's a bad life. A failure doesn't mean you're a failure. And being behind someone else doesn't mean you're behind in life. You are living a different story. So, instead of asking, "How can I become good enough?" try asking, "What would I do if I already believed I was enough?" Maybe you'd stop apologizing for everything. Maybe you'd speak honestly. Maybe you'd finally start the thing you've been afraid to start. Maybe you'd stop chasing people who don't value you. Maybe you'd give yourself permission to rest without feeling guilty. Because when you stop trying to prove your worth, you finally have energy to build your life. And this is where something powerful begins. You don't need to become a completely different person. You need to stop treating yourself like someone who needs to be fixed. But there's still one final battle. Even after you understand your worth, that old voice may still come back. The doubt, the comparison, the fear. So how do you respond when it does? That's where the real transformation begins. In the final chapter, Chapter 5, You Are Enough Now. Live like it. Before we finish, I want you to think about the person you've been trying so hard to become. The person who never makes mistakes, never disappoints anyone, always feels confident, always knows what to say, always has everything figured out. Maybe you've been waiting to become that person before allowing yourself to feel proud. But what if you never have to become perfect? What if you can be proud of yourself while you're still growing? Because being enough doesn't mean you've reached the end. It means you stop making your worth dependent on how far you still have to go. You can want more without believing you're less. You can improve without hating who you are today. You can have bigger dreams without treating your current life like a failure. So, from today, when that familiar voice says, "You're not good enough," don't immediately believe it. Pause, take a breath, and ask, "Is this actually true, or am I simply afraid?" When you compare yourself to someone else, ask, "Am I comparing my entire life to one moment of theirs?" When you make a mistake, ask, "What can I learn from this instead of using it against myself?" And when you feel the need for someone's approval, ask, "Would I still choose this if nobody knew about it?" These questions won't magically remove every insecurity. That's not the goal. The goal is to stop letting insecurity make your decisions. Because confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's learning to move forward while doubt is still there. And remember, you don't need to prove your worth every morning when you wake up. You don't need to earn the right to respect yourself. You don't need to become someone else to deserve your own acceptance. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to start again. And you are allowed to be proud of how far you've come, even if you still have a long way to go. So, tonight, when you look at yourself in the mirror, don't ask, "Am I finally good enough?" Ask something better. Am I finally learning to believe that I am? Because maybe the life-changing moment isn't when everyone else finally sees your value. Maybe it's the moment you finally see it for yourself. And if you've spent years feeling like you weren't enough, let this be the moment you stop fighting yourself. Not because you've become perfect, but because you've finally understood something important. You were never required to be perfect to be worthy. You only needed to stop forgetting your own worth. Now it's your turn. What's one thing you've been using to measure your worth that you're ready to let go of? Tell me in the comments. And if this message spoke to something you've been quietly carrying, stay with Mind Mastery, because sometimes the biggest transformation doesn't begin when you change your life. It begins when you finally change the way you see yourself. Before you leave, before you finish this video and move on with your day, pause for a moment. Think about everything you've been telling yourself. Maybe you've spent years believing you're not attractive enough, successful enough, smart enough, or confident enough. Maybe you've compared your life to everyone around you and wondered why you seem to be falling behind. Maybe you've achieved things you once dreamed about, but instead of enjoying them, you immediately started chasing the next goal, as if being proud of yourself had to be earned again and again. If that's you, remember this. You don't have to become perfect to be worthy. You don't have to impress everyone. You don't have to prove your value through money, success, appearance, relationships, or achievements. You are allowed to grow while still accepting who you are today. You can want a better life without believing your current life has no value. You can make mistakes without deciding that you are a failure. And you can have insecurities without allowing them to control your decisions. So, before you leave, ask yourself 3 honest questions. What am I using to measure my worth? Is it money? Success? Other people's opinions? Your appearance? Or the things you've accomplished? Now, ask yourself, whose approval am I really chasing? And finally, what would I do differently if I truly believed I was already enough? Don't rush your answer. Sit with it. Sometimes, the biggest changes begin with a question we're finally brave enough to answer honestly. And if this story felt personal, if you've ever looked at yourself and quietly wondered, why am I never enough? I want you to know, you're not the only one. Millions of people carry that feeling quietly. They smile, they work, they achieve, they help others, and yet, deep inside, they still wonder if they're enough. So if this story reminded you of someone, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or someone who always seems confident, but may secretly be struggling, share this video with them. Don't send it to judge them. Send it simply to remind them. You're not alone. And if this message connected with you, tell me in the comments. What's one thing you've been using to measure your worth that you're ready to let go of? Your answer might help someone else realize they're not alone either. If you found this audiobook meaningful, leave a like and subscribe to Mind Mastery Audiobook for more original motivational stories about mindset, confidence, self-worth, discipline, and personal growth. And remember, you don't need everyone to believe in you before you start believing in yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to keep moving, keep learning, keep growing, and become someone you can be proud of. Because maybe the greatest change in your life won't happen when everyone finally sees your value. Maybe it happens when you finally see it for yourself.